It's a first-hand account of history. If you are somebody who loves history and you love maybe a specific time period or maybe like certain war or battle. Hey guys, and welcome back to CVA Thrifts. I'm Jen. I actually haven't done a video like this in a while, probably all summer, because, you know, school's out, kids are here, it's harder to do things like this. But school's back in, kids are back in, so I thought we would do a little like sit down chat about reselling, you know, that kind of stuff. So today's video, first of all, and this is just in general as far as like life, but it also applies to reselling, okay? Money is not the only type of currency in the world. Time is too. So that might sound a little like cat inspirational poster, but it is true. Money and time can both be spent. And so what that means as far as like, you know, reselling, I would say, like me, for example, I have been looking for a Christmas like dish set. I really want one, like a vintage one. And it is something that I could just go online and try and like find there, and I'm probably gonna pay a couple $100s for it to have it like sent to me. So if I had the money to put into that, I could just get it, I'd have it now, and it would be done. But I don't have the money to put into a Christmas dish set. So what I have to do, because I don't have the money for that, is I have to spend my time, which means that I have to go to Goodwill, and I have to go to yard sales, and I have to go when I go to estate sales or wherever, marketplace, that kind of stuff. I have to spend my time looking for that so I can find it at a price that I can. So if you are somebody who is looking for something specific for whatever part of your life, you can either spend money or time. Okay? The reason I talk about that is because the thing that I'm going to be talking about today as far as reselling is going to take time. So I'm going to explain it to you, and it might sound really cool and it might sound like something that you're interested in, but just know you can make more money sometimes from these kinds of items, but it's going to take you significantly more time to list them. It's not going to be a quick thing. It's not going to be something that you can just like a video game, which there is a benefit obviously to selling video games. Video games, easy to list, easy to ship. It's a very quick thing. So if you are somebody who's just like, yeah, I want to resell, but you know, I don't want to spend a whole lot of time researching something. I just want to be able to find some stuff that I can sell easily, ship easily. Books, video games, things like that might be more your speed. That whole long story is to talk about the fact that I am going to talk today about selling ephemera. It is ephemera, right? I never know if I'm saying it right, but I say it and nobody's corrected me yet, so whatever. I have been reselling in one form or another since I was like 13. And what I mean by that is like, obviously I wasn't, well maybe not obviously, people probably do it now, 13-year-olds, but I wasn't like doing it the way I am now. But my father has always, I remember way back, I mean, I probably remember 90s because I was born in the 80s. But like, I remember going to card shows with my father, and he would set up a table and he would set up all of his baseball cards, and like it would be a bunch of other people doing the same thing, and people could come and buy them. I remember going to him with that, like to that. And I remember, I think it was like 1999, he started to sell on eBay. He told us like, you know what, at that point he was selling mostly records. He knew a lot about records, and he had all of his record books because it was a little different. You had to like go through your record book, see what the value of it was and list it. And so he would sell that, and I would help him like ship things. That was part of my like chores, I guess, if you will, is like learning how to ship records and help him clean them. Like he hand washed all of them. It was a whole thing. And then my brother got into reselling, and when my brother got into reselling, he got into ephemera specifically. I think he tested out a few things and he kind of settled on this is what he liked. And so I helped with that. I helped list things, I helped ship things. I was not the one that went to find it at that point, but I would help him with all of the other aspects of it. And so like that's what I did, got paid for it. So it was nice, you know, like that was my like teenage thing that I did. So when I started doing it on my own, I started, maybe not started with ephemera, but like I definitely was just like, you know what, I know how to do this kind of stuff, like I'm gonna try that. And let me tell you, like going on and finding it is a whole different beast. So that is one of the things that just takes time, unless you want to spend the money. So one or the other. So if you want to spend the money, you can go on places like Live Auctioneer, find, you know, groups of letters, stuff like that, bid on it, get it back, and try and like sell them individually to make more of a profit. We don't really do that anymore, and I'll go into why in a few minutes. That's not something, like ephemera is not something you're really gonna find at yard sales. We did find it at one yard sale, and like there's a video about it, but they took it from me. But that's the breaks. Usually people at yard sales are not gonna be selling letters from their family. You know, pictures, like their old family pictures, anything like that. They're gonna keep that stuff, and even if they do like get rid of it, most people probably just don't see the value in it, so they just toss it. They just think it's a bunch of old papers, they don't want to go through it, and they toss it. So it's not going to be something you're generally going to find at a yard sale. Although if you have, please comment below and tell me about that, because that's pretty cool. The other place that you can find stuff like this is estate sales. Estate sales is the place that I will generally find it, and it's really the only place that I will generally buy it from now. Again, there's other places. You might know somebody who is a reseller as well, and like they know that you're into this stuff, so when they find it, they'll pick it up and sell it to you because they don't want to mess with it. So it is something that you can find in other ways, but like I'm just saying, for me, generally speaking, we're getting it from estate sales. And depending on the estate sale company will depend on how much you pay for it. We've definitely spent a fair amount of money on ephemera, but it's not something that I personally am gonna spend a ton of money on. So ephemera is cool. What is ephemera? It's basically just old pictures, it's old letters, it's old ledgers, sometimes cookbooks, if they're handwritten, bank statements, receipts, basically anything that is kind of like a piece of paper of some sort that is from an older time period. And it is, you can definitely make some good money off of it. I have seen in all the time that I've like done this kind of stuff, I have seen letters, like one individual letter go for thousands, and that's happened multiple times. So it's not a bad thing to get into if it's something that interests you. You can definitely make some money from it. The last time Brandon and I sold ephemera was a couple years ago, and we made, for like 2 weeks, we made about $7,000, which, I mean, that's really good money for a couple weeks. But prior to that 2 weeks of us making that money, it took us 3 months to get through it all. And so we essentially had to stop listing other things and just decide we're gonna focus on this. So what I like to do is I like to purchase it whenever I see it for a price that I feel comfortable paying for it. I like to get it, and I essentially am like that squirrel who stores up nuts for winter. So like when yard sale season's over, when you're not necessarily going to be picking up as many items to resell, when you're trying to get through your death pile, that's when I will generally start listing ephemera, because I know it's going to take a long time to get through. I know it needs my focus. I know that like I have to just decide, this is it. This is what I'm gonna be like selling right now, and push everything else aside. It's its own beast of a project. And the reason for that is, in my opinion, pretty simple, hopefully. But when you think about it, when you think about ephemera, when you think about what it really is, what these letters are and that kind of thing, it's a first-hand account of history. if you are somebody who loves history and you love maybe a specific time period, or maybe like certain war or battle, or you love a certain country or whatever it is, if you're a history buff and there's something about history that really interests you, then a letter or a ledger or a diary, like those kinds of things are going to be a first-hand account of that time period. And it's so cool. Like it's such a cool thing. And it's definitely an interesting thing, and people will pay a fair amount of money for it. The big thing with ephemera is that not all of it is going to sell for big money. Again, because it's that first-hand account of history. So if you've got a letter that's like from 1886, and the letter is about, like, it's to a mom writing to her son, and she's saying, last week so-and-so came to visit and we went to church on Sunday. Like that, I mean, you might pay some for that. That might be interesting to you, depending on who the person was and that kind of thing. But if you have a letter from 1886 and it's written by the guy who did the patent for the first car ever created, you're going to get a whole lot more money for that, obviously. So it's something where, like, it really depends on content. Content is king when it comes to ephemera. It's not, and the thing is that when you're buying it, you don't know necessarily always what it's actually going to be about. So like I got a group of letters like one time, and like most of them didn't do like too well, but I sold one for a couple $100 because it was talking about a town celebrating like the 4th of July, and the president had been coming in to see them. So it was talking about all the preparations and the festivities and like all of this kinds of stuff, and the president coming, and like, so it was a cool letter. So that one went for significantly more. It's the same group that I bought it from, but because that one was talking about that specifically, it sold for a whole lot more. So it's something where you have to be willing to read through every single, in this case, letter, and look for something that makes it interesting, for something that tells a story. You have to be willing to take the time. If you've got a group of photographs, like old cabinet cards or whatever it is, tintypes, you have to be willing to take the time to look through every one of those and see if there's a name. See if you can identify anybody in it. See if you can place it within something cool with history. So it's something that, you know, like I said, content is king when it comes to it. Not everything's going to be valuable. Not everything's going to be good. And so when you're going through a large stack of letters, you have to be willing to take the time to read through each individual one, and you have to be willing to take the time to look up all of the names and see, is this person significant as far as like from a historical standpoint, or is what they're saying significant from a historical standpoint, you know? So it's something that you really have to be willing to put that time in, willing to put that research in. It's almost kind of something that you probably should love going into it to at least a certain extent, because otherwise it really can become tedious, especially if you're reading through a group of stuff and there really isn't any sort of like interesting content. And so you're just like, well, I can't find anybody's name. I can't find this. Like, this is not going to be something that's going to go for a whole lot. So you really have to be willing to spend the time and energy to put into it. But if you do, there could be a big reward at the end of it. I've seen weeks where like in 1 week you've got like 20,000 in profit, which is amazing and mind-blowing. Who wouldn't want to make that kind of money? Like it's just completely life-changing. But you have to be willing to like take your time and spend it on. And as you, especially if you're just starting with it, I wouldn't advise going on someplace like Live Auctioneer and trying to find it, because it's something that you have to kind of have the knowledge and you kind of have to have the experience. Because there were times that like Brandon and I would buy something on like a live auction site, and we ended up spending almost exactly what it was worth. So, you know, we spent on a group of letters what we got back selling the letters individually. So it wasn't anything that was worth our time, and we spent a lot of money up front that took us a lot of time to get back. So if you're just starting off with this kind of thing, like, I would not suggest going that route, because it is a gamble. Like, it really is. It's, you know, like, it's something where you've got to be willing to be okay with the fact that you might lose money on this kind of stuff, because again, just content is king. It all comes down to that. So as far as like listing ephemera, you've got a couple different options. Some people, you know, I see it because like there's a couple Facebook groups that have it, even on eBay, things like that. There are people who find ephemera and don't necessarily want to mess with ephemera. It's not their thing, and so they will sell it off in large groups on one of those two things, because they know they can get something for it, you know, and it might not be as much as it's worth if you sell it individually, but they know it's worth something. You can definitely like sell it that way. Or like I said, if you are somebody who is a reseller and you've got a couple people you know, and one of them is someone who you know just really loves to sell this stuff, you can find it and sell it to them. You know, you might find it for, say, 100, for example, because I think that's how much we spent recently on some. And you might take it to them and sell it to them for 200, and they might get 1,000 off of it. It's gonna take them significantly more time than it took you to just double your money right there. So you can definitely just kind of take it. If you don't want to go through it all, sell it as a chunk, and I will buy that. Or if you want to take it and sell it individually, you can do that. I don't really do it that way personally, but it's not, you can definitely do it that way. If you look into it and you think like, yeah, you know, this is probably worth around this, I'm gonna list it at this, you can do that. This is really the only thing that I do as auctions. So I will sell ephemera as auctions. And the reason for that is because, again, it is that first-hand account of history. It does have so much to do with the story. And so it's something that for me, and what I've seen like over the years with helping with it, with selling it myself, with all of it, is that sometimes it really is best to leave it up to the buyers to determine value, because it might be something that particular letter or that particular picture or that particular diary them is worth a whole lot of money. And so if you can get two people who are interested in it, and for both of them it's worth a fair amount of money, like to me, I just feel like it always has worked better as an auction. Again, for me, sometimes it doesn't sell as well. That's kind of, again, the risk you take with auction. But once I've spent however much time researching it, I know the story, I know what it is, I put in as much detail as possible. I put in excerpts. If it's letters, I put in excerpts from the letter, you know, describing things that are interesting, that kind of stuff. Obviously, make sure the pictures are good, that kind of thing. And then I list it as a 7-day auction, and I let basically the market determine the value. So I let the people who are buying it determine how much they're willing to pay for the individual letter. Sometimes it's really paid off well. It's something that, like I said, you've got to be willing to put in the time. You've got to be willing to spend your time going through this, because you want to be able to make potentially that kind of big money. Then you just have to decide that you're going to be solely focused on that for while you were. So hopefully this video was helpful for you. Hopefully it was interesting, made sense, all of that. If you have any comments, questions, if you love selling ephemera, comment down below with some of the coolest things that you found. I'd love to hear it, because I like history. I'm not even as big of a history buff as Brandon or like my brother or anything like that, but like I I think history is cool. Like, I love reading these things. I love learning about these things. I love, like, I got a group of letters from like a young girl who was living in a boarding house in my town, and I loved reading through them and reading about the places that I know now, that I go and I visit, and like reading about them through the lens of somebody who lived in the 1800s and saw what it was like then. And it was so cool reading through those. Like, I loved it. And so it's definitely a cool thing, but again, it's just you gotta decide if it's for you, essentially. So yeah, definitely click that subscribe button, come back, watch us, hang out, and we'd love to have you. Have a good day.